Thanks for staying with us. Now, President Akufo-Addo on January 2018 named Martin Alamisi Amidu as Ghana's first special prosecutor. The last 21 months has seen Mr. Amidu approved and sworn in to take office. He's over the period spoken many times about constraints making his work difficult. His latest includes a scathing attack and allegation leveled against the Attorney General. Let's take a listen.
It was a war which led to us getting the LIs made because I had a lot of confrontations with the Attorney General.
LI being what? The legislative
instrument. About the way they wanted to set up the office. They wanted to set up the office as a lame duck, which I resisted. And there are exchanges of letters which proves it. Eventually, I got LIs which I thought could let us work. And this was only in December last year.
But in many respects, they've turned it into a lame duck office.
It's not lame duck.
So tell us what
as far as I'm concerned, as I've told you, yes, within the short time,
yes,
that is when I got into that office, I have 8 people in the courts.
Currently as we speak?
Currently as we speak.
And these are not, like you said earlier, you know, sometimes, let me be honest with you, there are people that think that you are there to prosecute people from the other side, not from the side of the government. These are people across board.
I never will prosecute one side. When I was invited for vetting, yeah, I told the whole of Ghanaians, crime will be crime, right? And I left government in 2012 precisely because people wanted me to prosecute the opposition alone and would not deal with their own.
And you don't do that?
I don't do that. Crime is crime. I have a conscience. I can't sleep if I chose only one group and left the other.
Well, the office has so far filed 2 cases in court, the Republican Mahama Yariga and one other which has to do with some cars the MP bought, and the Republican Mahama Yariga and 6 others which relates to importation of ambulances. Ms. Amidu, as a private citizen, single-handedly secured major judgments against Wyoming and Waterville. This morning we ask, is the special prosecutor being prevented from working, or is he simply making excuses for his failure to deliver? Adam Senanu is co-chair of Citizens Ghana Movement Against Corruption. He joins us via Skype. Also joining us is Martin Pebu. He's a legal practitioner. Mr. Pebu, do I have you or I have Senanu on first? Okay.
Well, you have Mr. Senanu.
Yes, I do have Mr. Senanu. Thank you. Are you impressed, first of all, with the work done by Mr. Amidu so far?
Well, I'm not quite sure I'll use the word impressed, but I can say that I don't think that enough work has been done so far.
Okay. What was your own expectation in terms of, we know the cases that he's prosecuted, what more were you expecting that he would be doing?
I think that at this stage we would have expected that some of these prosecutions should have been completed, clear examples of what happens to individuals who choose not to follow due process and take away from the public purse would have been set. And I think that much more time would be spent focusing on the proceedings of cases rather than talking about other agencies that may not be collaborating.
So is he simply making excuses?
I wouldn't say he's making excuses. I think that's the nature of Mr. Martin Alamisi Ben Kaiser Amidu. And sometimes you have to take the whole package as it is. However, I think that there's a need for all of us to, as it were, influence him to focus more on the tasks at hand. He shouldn't be granting interviews where he spends so much time talking about other agencies and people who are not collaborating. He has some powers which he should be taking advantage of in the courts to compel such agencies and individuals to do what is right. Otherwise, he should provide the specifics so that the public can make an informed decision. But I think too much time has been spent, as it were, lamenting about some of these issues.
We know what he did, what he's capable of doing with that judgment that he secured for the states. Hasn't he got genuine reasons, him talking and saying the kind of things that he's talking, if he's not getting the necessary collaboration?
Well, yes, but you see, there's a thing when you want to mobilize the goodwill of citizens on your behalf to get change. I think that because of very high expectations we started out with, and then there was the long pause where the whole issues of logistics, of where the office would be, of manpower, of resources had to be dealt with. Ghanaians were a bit let down. Now, at this stage, it's not very useful where we over and over hear that, okay, Attorney General, CID, other groups are not supporting, they're undermining, when we do know that he has some ability to get them to do what is right. I think that at this point, what would serve his best interest and the interest of that office is to make sure that there are some of these cases that have been completed, that people can see that work is being done, his competency is still there, he's able to get the results, and on riding on the back of that, make his arguments. I think that will make a case, a stronger case for the office and galvanize many more people to be supportive of the cause of the office.
And do I hear, is it tiredness in the way that you express yourself in terms of he's talking too much, he should just get down and work?
I think we are all getting a bit tired of this part of Martin. We are not tired of the individual. He's a strong man. He gives us strong leadership. He's one of those that has made a lot of difference in our landscape when we talk about the fight against corruption. So we'll still love him for that. But this particular part of him, we hope he tones it down and just gets to work.
Mr. Senano, stay with me. Let's engage Mr. Martin Pebu. He's a private legal practitioner. He's joining us via phone. Are you tired of Mr. Amidu and the kind of things that he tends to say when he gets the opportunity to speak to the people?
Not at all. Not in the least. Rather, he's giving us a, let me say, for lack of a better way, sneak of how governance really works. You know, because somehow, when you are at the periphery, you tend to believe the machine is moving smoothly. Everything is just turning correctly, like you say in Ghanaian English. But from Mr. Amidu's epistles and pronouncement, you're able to see how conflicts arise and they are resolved. So for me, the after is that, well, it's complained again. It's really surprising that he hasn't received much of his budgetary allocation, because he's saying he has only 3 investigators and still in the 3-bedroom property. At least, as for acquiring property, we know that sometimes because of due diligence and all that, it can take months. But a number of investigators. So let's say this one, the fact that the Office of the National Prosecutor is a very special national call. So trust me, if Mr. Amidu and the government had announced the topic that we need a makeshift facility, maybe let's say, because if you start renting and people think they're ready, that would be another problem. If you had announced that, I was surprised that people would have stepped up and offered bigger facilities. So it appears that that's where we're paying attention. They are not giving him enough support, both government and the public. And some of the people that just said, look, in the meantime, whilst their diligence or trying to get the money out of it, national.
But Mr. Pebu, one will argue, without the state resources, he was able to take on the AG's office and Woyome. Now he is where he is, more resources than he had when he was alone and was a private vigilante, if you like.
The two are not the same. You see? No. Yes. The two are not the same. You see? When got a different kettle of fish. It's just like that our people conducted and court gave judgment, and which has helped the criminal justice system immensely. You see, the two are different. When it comes to prosecution, you can see you need an investigator. When the case is reported, you need an investigator who will investigate. Sometimes you have to the investigator has to see. Don't forget, he has a family. Most of the time, no marriage, he has extended family and all that. So what I'm talking about is that the two are different. As you bring the court by yourself as a lawyer, relatively it's quite easier compared to setting up a machinery for investigation. You say, so I know people have made that comparison, but from where I sit, they are totally different, really, totally different. So, you see, let's this platform. Perhaps the next thing is that I challenge you after this interview, go to him, ask him that he wants the public for help. You see the way people will rush offer Mr. Amidu succeed. The person has this downside that generally we shouldn't be going to offering agencies help. It's not the best because sometimes then it's like just compromise them. But because you don't know the strength of his Amidu's strong personality, I think if somebody offered him a bigger position in the meantime, and tomorrow it turns out that the person is involved in bribe, if the person is a private next time, and it turns out that the person is involved in bribing a public officer, the Amidu will back down. No. His track record that his friends, he has not done that at all. If his friend falls foul of the law, that would really give him up. I don't know if he has time, but how minister his car, he was surprised that couldn't even help his when that was deputy attorney general. You see, a former minister, old man, he just was very powerful in the country. Just the family wouldn't help him. So far, that's the say that for me, I'm not sure that the normal problems that accompany security agencies asking for public donations will be deviled in. So in the meantime, this is what you can do. I think do a follow-up message, ask for help publicly. So let's step in and help in the meantime. And then also, I think immediately the Minister of Finance, what is the business program that is preventing them from the 180 million he was promised? Is this not this is what October? How come that so 9 months is the month into the year, they've not done much in terms of supporting you. So let's throw the searchlight on that aspect. That is where we really can make progress. As for the conflict, it's good he's brought them out because that for me, how this officers, interact in order to bring about reform.
So let me bring Mr. Senanu into this. Mr. Senanu, we've been trying to track how much Mr. Amidu has received so far out of the 180. What do you know about that?
Well, I don't have any current information on what he has received. And I agree with Martin that when I was saying that he needs to give us more specifics, I was really curious as to has he gotten the manpower in place now? Has he been, because there's a sense in which it's the presidency that has the power to appoint staff. So one of the questions on our minds has been, has he gotten the necessary staffing in place, a budget officer, procurement officer? Has he been able to assess the funding? Because we know when he went before Parliament, one of the things he said was that he had not been able to assess the previous budget. Has that happened? I think that he needs to focus a lot more in his narratives when he engages the media and other partners on what exactly is going on in terms of processes that allow him to perform, so that all of us are well informed enough to speak and advocate on his behalf on whichever platforms we find ourselves.
Finally on this, because I want us to look at other matters, Mr. Martin Pebble, doesn't the Act allow him to be independent, to act on his own as it is now?
No, when you say independent, it's such a big way. This kind of independence, so there's a prosecutor independence, that one is not fully independent. Part of its talents are derived from the big, but on that score, it's not much of a problem because everybody knows the Amidu's strength and the way generally, also let's forget their picture now, that and publicly, I'm very sure that the agency is feeding the Amidu. So that one is not much of a problem. I think where the problem lies is the financial independence. And that one, he doesn't have it. He gets his money from the national. So if the bureaucracy or the procedures are preventing him, that is where we should look at. You remember he himself in an earlier episode had complained about critical effects where an be set up, but resources will not be allocated to it, and then it becomes more or less a white elephant. So it's a financial independence that we need to go back. Also, we need to help him advocate. From where I sit, I'm surprised. It's really surprising that, what do you call it? Of September, it's only coincidentally, last year, around this same time, we had this argument that this discussion. I remember I was sitting out of the country, we had fights that ran. This same topic, are we resolving it 1 year on? A person means that, the public officers will release money quickly. It just baffles me. So I think we follow up the finance and the damage itself on the expectation. That's how we are part of making the system run well. We will learn. So I encourage you. That's the big thing.
Gentlemen, let's talk about this other issue. Former boss of the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, Amidu Short, is calling for a comprehensive review of aspects of Ghana's laws which give extensive powers to the president, especially in the appointments of ministers. At an event to launch a research project on Ghana's right to information journey, he pointed to that as the cause of the divisive nature of Ghana's politics. I want us to take a listen to him. I'll come back to you for a quick reaction.
Government must ensure the speedy passage of that law. And there are certain provisions which we need to revisit. And I mentioned the provision, for example, about where officials can use as a defense the fact that they have recused themselves from the deliberations in awarding contracts to their own company. And I'm saying that provision needs to be revisited because I don't think it is in the interest of transparency to allow people who exercise influence over the award of contracts to bid for contracts in the institution over which they have such an influence.
And that's former Shrash boss Amidu Short there. I still have Mr. Senanu and Mr. Pebu, one on Skype, the other one on phone. Gentlemen, a quick reaction to what you've just heard. I'll start with you, Mr. Senanu.
Well, the Constitution for me is the #1 area where I think that this country needs to take serious action to bring us to par with other jurisdictions to get the kind of results we want to see in our democracy. And I agree with Mr. Short absolutely. The excessive executive powers are part of the reason why we have all these challenges. Where you have a president who appoints all the chief executives, the boards, and so what have you. You are lending yourself to political power, political party influence beyond measure. And that in itself creates so many of the challenges we see. So absolutely, it's one of the things that we ought to highlight enough in this political season as we enter it next year.
Mr. Pebu, we've been here before. We attempted to review the Constitution as we have it. What is it about being in opposition? You tend to see things a bit differently from when you're in power. Executive will want to be as powerful as they are today. Who wants to change it?
And the last question. Like usually say, stock is cheap. You say, yeah, stock is cheap. That's how we've been experiencing government in, government out. But, let's just continue the conversation. Because, Amidu, you know that watching the media landscape, 10 years, it wasn't this vibrant. So, and looking at the way the government listens to media conversations and tries to, tries to meet the expectations, I think the conversations are usually very important. Remember, I always mentioned the appointment of the special prosecutor itself. You remember how the president wrong-footed all of us when he gave the position to Mr. Amidu, and other examples. So let's keep the conversation going. But on the suggestion by Mr. Short. You see, just changing the provision alone that a chief executive should not just say himself from board deliberations on a contract that he has submitted. You say, yes, it's true that alone is not sufficient. But the bottom line is that we as a people, what are our values? Our values are not exactly intact. That's putting it mildly. In our culture, we value money so much. You get rich quick. Anyhow, you see, that is what is affecting us. So changing the law alone doesn't guarantee an overnight change in societal behavior. So all I'm saying in a word is that we need to do an eclectic approach. We change the law, but we also change our values. Oh, young people want to get rich. Young people want to get rich. Now, so those people they used to refer to young people, they are now they are 60 and 70. You see, so it tells you that it didn't start today. It didn't start today. So it's just that there's something wrong with our societal value. And I think it's just chunk of it. It's our perfect. When people are poor, Charlie, it's not easy to observe ethics because self-preservation is a first human instinct. So in a word, maybe once again, we always call on that person advocate on the values of honesty, and the effects of the corruption and all that on our society. You say, yes, because if you just only change the law, you don't get much. Maybe we can find a very honest in our society with a special program to celebrate them. Let's celebrate those, and in our lifestyles, we know. So in our individual life, yes, and we interact with people who are generally kept very honest. Let's have a way of celebrating them. Perhaps that we must take more people.
All right.
But, yeah, and finally, let's also say this. There is a passage in the Freedom of Information Act. I think it's going to help in stemming the conflict of interest problem. You know why? Because as journalists, this time, once the law is in place, does not see anything, and you write the agency or institution, because of the law, they will quickly answer the question. So there'll be a question. Is XY contract? Did the have an interest in it? So once you place a lot of those questions and they are answered, and they are brought out to the media, and then we are naming and changing them, it's going to help send the tide.
Okay.
So
all right. Okay, Mr. Pebble, thank you very much. Mr. Senano, I'd like to say thank you to you as well. I like, the bit about now that we're going into 2020, let's begin to have these conversations and let's see the commitments that they would bring to it, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely, and thank you too for having us.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on this conversation.